Dale, I'm excited to have you here. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Dale, as a guy that spent 30 years, 30 plus years at the major league level as an umpire, you have seen the game from a different perspective, one that I'm excited to learn about today. But can we just kind of start with talk a little bit about your background in baseball and then how you got into umpiring?
Sure, and thanks for having me on. I was a huge baseball fan as a kid. I grew up in Eugene, Oregon, and at that time, of course, there was no Seattle Mariners, so I was a LA Dodger fan, and the reason for that was my grandfather lived in LA, and the first major league game I ever saw was at Dodger Stadium in 1973, and so I was loved baseball, and I played every year that I started. I don't know, in fourth grade or something. But I thought for sure that I was going to grow up and be the first baseman for the Dodgers. There was no problem with that, but I did encounter a few problems. The fact that I couldn't field, hit, run, or throw, and that was probably what curtailed my baseball playing days. I think the last year I played was when I was 14. I was going into high school, and of course in high school, either varsity or certainly wasn't going to make either one of those teams. At the time that I went to high school, it was only a 3-year high school, and we didn't have freshman baseball. So, I was 15 years old, and I loved the game, and I was wanted to stay involved if I could, but at that age, you're really kind of too young to be coaching, and I wouldn't have made a very good coach anyway, I don't think. But a friend of mine had said that he umpired the summer before, and he suggested that maybe I look into that. And so I thought, I watched the umpires a lot when I played baseball because I was on the bench a lot, and I thought that might be something to look into. So I checked it out, started umpiring at 15, and really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the challenge. I enjoyed the fact that every day was different, and I kind of excelled at it. And so had a different friend that had gone to umpire school a few years prior, and he said, you should really look into going into umpire school. He said, obviously that's the only way you can get into professional baseball is to go to one of the two umpire schools, but there's quite a few people that go just to learn about umpiring, to become a better umpire, and then go back to their communities and their associations and move up and maybe work, college and that type of stuff, just learning from the guys that know it best. And so I thought that's a great idea. I'd love to do that. And so when I was 21, I went to umpire school, and I finished 5th in my class. Nice. Sent to the 1-week advanced school where I finished in the top 10 somewhere. They didn't actually list the numbers, but we knew that there were actually 13 slots that would be going to minor league spring training. And so those would be the top 13 guys of the advanced school. So I got one of those slots, and I went to minor league spring training, and that a career was started. That was in 1981.
Nice. So when you say you were 5th in the class, what does that mean? What does that entail?
Well, at the time that I went to umpire school, there were 2 schools, but one of the schools had 2 schools in themselves. In other words, they had a school in San Bernardino, California, and then they right after that school ended, they had a school in Sarasota, Florida. I went to the San Bernardino school in California, and that school actually only lasted a couple more years after that because of low attendance. The Florida schools usually got about 100, 125 guys. The San Bernardino school that year had 27. So wow. I was 5th out of. So when I say I finished 5th in the class, sounds very impressive. There's only 27 students. So
right.
There you go. But but the key to that though was the top 5 of the San Bernardino school would be sent to the advanced school. So I just made that, and that's a big deal to be able to go to the advanced school because the top, what it basically is the top 50 students from now the 2 schools in Florida go to this advanced school, and so that's the first barrier, first line, first goal that you try to make if you go to umpire school is to be in that group to go to the advanced school.
Nice. And what's the difference? Obviously, it's advanced, but what's the difference from that class that you went to the advanced class?
Well, the difference, first of all, you're obviously have the most potential as far as the
Sure.
schools are concerned, because they put you in that position. And it gives a chance. Now, once you go to the advanced school, now you're being observed by the people that run minor league baseball. You're also being observed by
Nice.
a major league umpire supervisor. So it's the first real time that you're getting your name out there, and to see getting you on the radar, so to speak. And also in the advanced school, that's when they assign, after that school's over, the minor league umpire supervisors assign you to whatever openings there are in minor league baseball that year. That could vary every year as far as that goes, because there's some years there's more people that are guys that are released out of the minor leagues, or some years it might be more than others. Also, umpires that decide to get out of umpiring and that kind of stuff. So, if you get into the advanced school, do well, and now they assign you into the lower minor leagues. That's again another goal that you want to make and get yourself into the system, and then you just work your way through that system.
Nice. Can you talk a little bit about the umpiring school? What all did you guys do during school? Obviously you're learning the rules, but there's a lot more to it that most people don't realize.
Well, there's so much more to umpiring, the intricacies of the profession. Obviously, rules are a huge part of it. You've got to know the rule book, and every an umpire school, which lasts about 4.5 weeks.
4.5.
Typical day at umpire school is you start off in the morning, probably 8 or 9 o'clock, and you devote about 2 hours or so into the rule book. And every rule is discussed and picked apart. And to help understand rules, to help to understand why a rule is in, you have to understand the genesis of that rule, the history of it. Why, in most cases, a rule is in there because something happened that we needed to make a rule about it. Yeah. And so it helps you understand the reasoning for a rule when you understand the history of it and how it came about. And so it's not just, here's the rule, and here's the rule, and here's the rule. It's actually breaking it down and understanding exactly why and how it's enforced and why it's enforced and those types of things. And there's you're constantly being quizzed on the sessions that you've already been through and that type of stuff as the school goes on. Then after the classroom in the morning, you break for the fields. The umpire schools have numerous fields and batting cages. The batting cages are set up with pitching machines, and you go in there and you call pitches. You call pitches from a right-handed hitter and a left-handed hitter, and all the intricacies of your plate work and your stance and your feet and your positioning and your head height and following the ball and tracking the ball with your eyes and all the things that go into that. On the regular fields, they have you're working the system, so to speak, the two-man system. Plate umpire, base umpire. The rest of the students are the quote-unquote players, and you rotate in and out. But you set up plays. They'll have a fungo hitter, and you set up runner situation. Runners at first and third, 2 outs. Runners first and second, 1 out. And hit a double play ball, hit a single to right, hit a ball down the line, and whatever. And the umpires that are working that rotation have to, as you are taught, obviously, have to work the rotation. Who has responsibility for the ball? If you're rotating, and then of course you have calls of slide plays, force plays, and you have to work on your timing, your positioning, your making sure you're stopped for the play and your head's not moving. And there's just a checklist of things as you're taught throughout the 4.5 weeks of how to take the play and how to call a play and those types of things. So it's a pretty intensive 4.5 weeks. It's 6 days a week. You get Sundays off usually, and it's a good 8 to 10 hours a day that you are working. And so I remember umpire school, but by the time the evening came and you might do some rule book studying or whatever, you were exhausted.
Yeah.
By there's just so much mentally and physically going on throughout a normal day at umpire school. But it was umpire school was a lot of fun.
It sounds.
You realize, I went into umpire school and I thought I was a pretty good umpire, and I realized that no, I wasn't. There was just so much to learn. Your positioning, footwork, stuff that I never even thought of, nor was I taught. At the lower levels.
Yeah, that does sound like a lot of fun. So obviously, the whole time you guys are going through that process, they are grading everything, and that's how they go on to pick who gets to go through.
Yeah.
So what are some of the things that they are grading?
They're grading everything from the day you show up at umpire school until they they put the class in the graduating order. You are being evaluated, and that means not just your rules tests and not just work with the cages or work on the field, but they're also the instructors also observing your demeanor, your personality, your how you react to things, how you react to criticism, constructive criticism, how you react to part of the deal on when you're doing this stuff out in the field. You have certain instructors that are going to be acting like managers, and they're going to come out and they're going to argue a play, and they want to see how you react to that. Are you calm? Are you do you eject the guy when you're supposed to? Do you not eject him when you should have? And the whole demeanor of things. And that all plays into a part in evaluating a student at umpire school because, again, it's much more. I mean, it's intensive enough, the ball strike, safe out, fair foul, but also demeanor and how you carry yourself and how you diffuse, hopefully, situations and not throw gas on the fire and all those types of things. Another good one is just, if you have an argument, an umpire school about a play, does that affect you the next three plays? Is that on your mind as you're trying to, because you can't do that. In a game, I missed a call. Okay, I missed a call. Guess what? I got another one coming up real quick. So I got to put that aside and move on. I can deal with that missed call after the game by, talking to my partner. If I have video, I'll watch all that stuff, but I can't dwell on it at the time because guess what? It's like a shortstop. He makes an error on a double play ball. He can't dwell on it. Now he misses another double play ball. It's all mentally. You have to shut that out and compartmentalize so much.
That's interesting. So now you go and you're one of the 13 that get assigned to the minor leagues. What is that like? You're saying to yourself, "Wow, I'm really going to go do this." And it's my first game. Can you kind of talk about, what the emotion was like? What was that moment like for you?
Well, I'm often asked some of the highlights of my umpire career, and I have many when I was in the major leagues, but some of the first highlights of my career was just that day in umpire school when I found out that I was in the fifth in class and I was going to go to the advanced school. The day that after the advanced school, I was told that I was ranked high enough to get a minor league spring training. Those are big hurdles to get over. Just as a percentage, they figure, and I don't know how accurate this is, but it's give or take, it's about 1% of the total class from all the schools will make it to the big leagues. It's just a very small amount because there's just not a lot of openings and that type of stuff. But my first minor league game was in Bend, Oregon, in the Northwest League, and I was nervous. I had the bases, and this was it. This was the new show for me, but a lot of times. And this has helped me throughout my whole career when I had big games or big series or whatever, is, the build up to it almost always is more butterflies, all that stuff. It's almost always worse than when it gets started. When the game starts, you're doing what you've been trained to do and what you've been doing for years, but it's the build up that often plays on you a little bit mentally, and that's certainly what happened before my first game, and then of course the next day my first game behind the plate in the Northwest League. But at that level, you're getting rookie players. You're getting rookie players either from straight from high school or from college. You get a lot of Dominican and Puerto Rican and Latino players. Many of them don't speak English. Many of them have never been to the United States, and it's all a new experience for them too. And both sides are learning. The players are learning not only how to play for their organization and the fundamentals that they want and those types of things, but they're learning what they can and cannot say to umpires, how to argue, as a lot of times, quite frankly, the managers, although they've been around baseball longer, obviously, but it's all a learning experience for them, just as it is for us. We've been trained as umpires, but now we're learning in real time and real life how to handle situations and how to, there's numerous times that I would handle something and it blew up in my face. I go, okay, note to self, I'm not going to do that again.
Yeah,
so,
right.
and so it's such a learning experience as you start off in professional baseball, even though players have played for years, and I had umpires for several years. It's still you're still kind of started brand new again.
That's interesting. So when you first got to pro ball, most would think that being behind the plate would be the toughest position. Would you agree with that when you first got to pro ball with the guys throwing harder and everything?
Yeah, I mean, I was, when you first, like in the Northwest League, I was now dealing with pitchers that threw harder and faster than I'd experienced at the high school and small college level. They had more array of pitches. Just wasn't fastball and curveball. I mean, there's all kinds of sliders, hard sliders on slow curve, blah 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 blah, all these things. And so, as an umpire, you're not thinking, oh gosh, I bet he's going to throw like a hitter might guess, I think he's going to come back at me with a fastball or whatever. And people ask me, do you think? No, I don't think that way because I'm not trying to hit the ball. I'm trying to judge the pitch as to what it is. So if I start guessing pitches, what he's going to throw, and I think he'll probably throw a curveball here, and he throws a fastball, and I'm not ready for it. So
yeah.
I mean, that doesn't even enter my mind what he's going to throw. What enters my mind is whatever he throws, I'm going to track that. And I was obviously getting pitchers that were much more skilled than I had used to, working. That being said, you're also getting pitchers that are still refining their own skills. Guys that throw real hard, but are real wild, or real inconsistent with breaking balls or whatever. And so again, it's just it's everybody is trying to fine tune and get better at what they do, but you're now doing it on granted, it's a lower minor leagues, but still a much bigger stage than you've been on.
Yeah, so when you're first starting out and you got a guy that's wild, I would think that'd be very challenging. Are the wilder guys, are they tougher to call?
Well, it's tougher for everyone, and the reason being is, a guy is, throwing all over the place. He just can't hit his spots, and he's all over the place. Now, as an umpire, my thoughts are, just one pitch at a time. Just take it one at a time. Just because he just threw 6 pitches in a row that were all over the place, that next one might be that good outside corner, strike. And you can't be thinking, well, he's been wild, and the next one's going to be wild. I mean, you have to be ready to call the strike if he actually gets one in there. That being said, if a guy's real wild and he's all over the place, and now he throws one close, but it's still not a strike, but it's the closest thing he's thrown. Everybody's like, and you ball it, everybody's, oh my God, it's like, okay, even though that pitch looked pretty good and it was the closest thing he's thrown, it's still not there, So it's just when a guy's wild, it's difficult for everybody because for the hitter, he's not sure what's going to happen, and he's also thinking he might be right at me, not intentionally, but just because the guy has no control. The catcher's trying to block everything, and if there's runners on, he doesn't want him to advance and all that. So it's just makes life a lot more difficult for everybody. Obviously, anytime I've been asked, well, who's your favorite pitcher, and my answer usually is anyone that throws strikes. I mean, if you got a guy that's consistently around the plate, it makes my life a lot easier. Why? Because first of all, he's throwing strikes. So now that tells the hitters, well, he's throwing strikes, we got to start swinging. And if the hitters are swinging, guess what? I don't have to make a decision. Right. And so, that's, I don't care if he's a rookie pitcher that's never been in the big leagues or the minor leagues or a veteran that's got 3 Cy Youngs. If they're not on that day, if they're not, around the plate and consistently, you got a rhythm going and throwing strikes, it's going to be a more difficult day. And if they are on, it's going to be a easier day. It's never easy, but an easier day than somebody that's not hitting their spots.
When you first got there, and I want to advance through your career, but I want to talk more about when you first started. What was it like the very first time you saw that really hard slider? Or for you, what was the tough pitch for you when you first got started in pro ball? Where you're just sitting there going, geez, that pitch gets me just about every time. Or was there a pitch like that?
Well, if a guy threw really hard, I've never seen, he's in the low to mid 90s. The few times I saw that, that was like, wow, he's bringing it. But but that's actually easier usually than the guy that has the real good breaking ball, the real hard slider, a good curveball, and don't even get me started on the knuckleball. Those are tougher because, first of all, when I first started out, I wasn't used to seeing such movement on a pitch that some of these guys had compared to what I've been working.
Yeah.
And that really taught you as an umpire. You're always taught as an umpire, one of the most important things you can do as an umpire is called timing. And it's exactly what it sounds like, timing. Yeah. Take your time. Do not call pitches or plays too early. Do not be calling them too fast. Take your time. Watch the pitch. Let have the ball hit the catcher's glove. Take that half second, and then make your decision. Now you make your decision at the plate area, but then you make the call. And the reason, if you slow up, you have less chance of missing a pitch. I've had numerous times in my career where, as the pitch comes in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, that's a strike, and then that extra half second or whatever it is of timing, I realize, no, that ball it broke, and it's just low or whatever, and I came close to calling a strike, but I balled it because of my timing, and I got it right. And if one of the first things you do as an umpire, especially behind the plate, but anywhere, is if you're struggling back there on pitches, am I calling them too fast? What's my timing? Slow down. And so when you first start out and you see these pitches that, quite frankly, you've never seen before, pitches that had so much movement on it. The most important thing I could do is slow down, let the pitch be completely over, and then make signal your call, a ball or strike or whatever. And if you had a much better shot of registering what exactly happened if you did that. If I started calling pitches too quickly, and you have a tendency to do that because the ball's moving and the guy's there and it's a game and your adrenaline's going and so one of the most important things and not only when I started the minor leagues, but the entire career, is to make sure that I had nice and slow timing, and that's probably one of that angle and distance as far as calling plays, just are keys to being a decent umpire.
Interesting. So when you say angle and distance, what does that mean?
Well, of course, when you first start out, you're just working two-man. So when you're a base umpire, you're calling a lot of stuff. And so you can't always be close to a plate. So the most important thing for an umpire is your angle, not your distance. You can be real close to a play, but if your angle's off, if you have a bad angle, you don't see the play. If I'm further away, but I've got a great angle, I got a great shot at getting that play right. So angle and distance are angle's always first before distance. Now, as you work up and you start working three-man and, of course, four-man, your distance a lot of times is always going to be there because you're just working that base or whatever. There are times when there's rotations and those types of things where that'll be a little bit different or multiple runners and an umpire goes out or whatever. But for the most cases, as you move up and have more umpires on the field, your distance isn't as much of a factor. Your angle is always a factor. You always want to have a good angle on whatever play is developing, so you have the highest percentage of seeing the play and getting it right.
Nice. So is there someone scouting every single game that you guys do?
Yeah, I mean, in the minor leagues, there's several minor league supervisors that travel throughout the country, and and evaluate the minor league umpires. They are. I'm not sure. When I was working back in the ice ages. It seems like the early '80s, and it was a little bit of a different system. They only, which is incredible to think about, but they only had 2 minor league supervisors. So to cover the entire United States and all the minor leagues. So one gentleman, Dick Nelson, basically covered all the minor leagues west of the Mississippi. Well, that's a lot of territory to cover in a 5 months, and to see all these umpires. Well, so we would be seen only twice a year back then. Now it's different now because there's more supervisors, so they're going to be seen more. But yes, we are evaluated when the supervisors are there. In some cities, they have what they call observers. They're not actual umpire supervisors, but they're somebody that maybe has umpiring background or just they observe games. They write reports. They don't comment necessarily on judgment and mechanics so much as they comment on demeanor and how they handle situations and perception. Again, perception is reality to a lot of people. I could be, I always give the story. If you're sitting on an airline, you're on a United Airlines flight, and in walks the pilot, and he's wearing Bermuda shorts and a Hawaii shirt with a hat and some sunglasses, and goes, "Hey, folks, I'm your pilot." And he could be the best pilot United ever had, but your perception is, "Who is this goof?" And I'm getting off the plane. So again, the same thing in umpiring perception. That's why you always want to hustle. That's why you always want to. You always tell guys. You work every game like there's a supervisor in the stands. The majority of games there's not, but you act like there is every time because that's how you should umpire every time you walk out there. And so, yes, you are observed. Now, once in the big leagues, every call that you make, every pitch that you call is graded. So, yes, we're under intense scrutiny.
So when you're going through that, do they share that report with you? So that you can kind of see where you stand?
Sure. What they do is you get a in all the leagues except the short minor leagues, the short A leagues that start in June. They only run from June to Labor Day. But in the full minor leagues that go from April until Labor Day, you get a mid-season report, and then you get a year-end report. And those are written up by the supervisors, and they consist of the games that they actually saw you work, and then also information from observers. They'll typically, especially like that. Well, both. If it's mid-season report and it says, you're doing good at this, blah blah blah. It's a form, and they have comments and stuff. But need work on your positioning on pickoffs at first. With only a runner on, you're not getting the angle. You should move up toward the 45-foot line, not toward the bay. I mean, little intricacy things, but it gives you an idea of what your deficiencies are according to them, and then that these are things that I need to improve on, that I need to work on, and that information goes in your file, and that information is what determines if you're going to move up the next year, or maybe go back to that league the next year. Or ultimately, if it's something that has just not been been reported on but not improved, they may release you. So
right.
All that is part of the whole system is being evaluated and scrutinized.
Yeah, and when you say that you have stuff to work on, is there do you guys have like practice, or is it all just kind of on the job training?
Well, there aren't classes, so to speak. I mean, these are things that you need to try to improve in real time. Basically, it's not like you can go to a weekend seminar and pick up on how to do this or whatever. Now, the top prospects in the lower minor leagues will, after the season's over, will go to instructional league. And again, if you're chosen to go to instructional league, that's a good thing. It's because of all the let's say for all the single A umpires, and I don't know the actual numbers, but all the single A, maybe double A umpires There are, I don't know, 16 instruction league slots or something. I'm not sure the number, but whatever it is, the supervisor will determine who they think the top prospects in each league or whatever, and they will send them to instructional league. That's a good thing. I went to instructional league after my second year in the baseball. I was in the California league. I went to instructional league, and then after my third year, I was in Double A in the Texas league, and I went to instructional league. I learned instructional league about 6 weeks from basically approximately mid-September until Halloween, and I learned so much in those 2 instructional leagues I went to that really helped my career. And the reason is because now at that time I think there was 8 of us in Arizona, because they had 2 of them. They had instructional in Florida and Arizona, and there was like 8 of us, but you had a lot of one-on-one individual with the supervisor, instruction, and were observed a lot more than, obviously, way more than you were during the season.
Yeah.
And so that really helped you fine tune things and learn more and how to handle things and how to do things. And so those are all very important steps in your career as you move up through the minor leagues.
Nice. And when you were going through, up through the minor leagues, is there a vast difference between, say, low A, Double A, and on to Triple A?
Yeah. Well, one of the biggest, to me, obvious differences is when I went from the California Long A League to Double A. Every major league team has several A-ball and rookie league teams, but they all have just one Double A team and one Triple A team. So once you get to Double A, you are dealing with you've eliminated a lot of players. Quite frankly, the players that get to Double A are just better than what you've been working. And the obvious change to me when I went to Double A was the speed of the game. They were faster. They covered more ground. They hit the ball harder. They threw the ball more consistently, and it just was when I went to for the Northwest League to the Cal League, I didn't see a huge difference. I saw a big difference when I got to Double A, and that was that's where you're really the cream is now rising to the top, so to speak, and it's very noticeable.
Nice. And so, what's it like when you got the call that says, "Hey, you're going to the big leagues"?
It was wonderful. It was quite frankly, it was surprising. And the reason I say that is in 1986, I was working American League spring training, and you have to remember that until the year 2000, the American League and the National League had their own umpire staffs. You're either one or the other. You didn't work the other league. Since 2000, it's now Major League Baseball umpire. I'm just an umpire in the Major Leagues, and I work all 30 teams. But back then, either the American League was interested in you, or the National League. If they were, when you're in AAA, they see you and they're interested. They would do what they call they would buy your option. And by buying your option, what that meant was now, like the American League bought my option the first year I went to AAA. So what that meant was the National League cannot steal me, so to speak. Now I'm an American League prospect. The good part about that is I was an American League prospect. I was a prospect for one of the big leagues. The bad part is there's 2 at that time. An umpire could go. There are 2 big league staffs, and now I'm pigeonholed into one, and the other one. It's not like they can. The American League is going to make a decision on me, and I don't have any say or the National League has no say on me. So anyway, the option is bought. I was working American League spring training in '85 and then '86, and in '86 there were 2 openings on the American League staff. Had been 2 retirements. There were basically 4 umpires trying to get those 2 spots, and I was 4th of those 4. I had only worked 1 major league game in my career the year before. I filled in for an umpire 1 game. It was a makeup game in Kansas City, and I worked third base. That's the only game I worked. The guy above me, who was third, worked about 39 games the year before, filling in for guys. And then the 2 guys that were above us had worked something like 60 games and 100 games or something. So, I working 1 game, I definitely was 4th on this pecking order. Well, there were two slots open on the staff, I just figured, the top two guys will go. I will move up in the pecking order, which means I will get more games this coming 1986 season, filling in for guys that are hurt or sick or have to, have a wedding to go to or whatever. And that'll be, obviously a good thing for my career as I get more exposure. Well, I was getting ready for a game behind the plate in Sarasota with the White Sox on April 1st, April Fool's Day. A lot of people think that's probably important. We had no cell phones or anything back then, and the clubhouse attendant came to me. It was about 20 minutes before the game was to start. He said, "You have a phone call. You can take it in here." And I said, "Phone call? That's weird." So I get on the phone. It's Dick Butler, who was the head of the American League umpires. He was actually, that was one of his last acts as the head of the umpires for the American League, because that year is when Marty Springstead started his tenure with the AL. But it was Dick Butler. He said, I just want, he talked real slow, Southern, he's from Texas, talked real slow. Dale, I hope you have some lead in your plate shoes today to keep you on the ground. I said, well, I'll look into that, Mr. Butler. Why is that? He goes, well, because as of today, you are now a member of the American League staff. Well, I didn't see that coming. Like I said, I thought I wouldn't get one of the two positions, but I certainly would move up in the pecking order. Well, I was thrilled. I was beyond thrilled. I was, it was just for the day that you went to umpire school, you hoped and dreamed that maybe this day would come, knowing there was a ton of obstacles between that umpire school day and that big league day. So I was excited, and it was one of the highlights of my career for sure.
Nice. So whenever you get there and you're surrounded by guys that've been there a long time, and now you're working with them, learning from them, did they kind of take you in? Talk a little bit about what it's like being a rookie umpire.
Well, it's like every time that you went to the big leagues, you went from being kind of the big fish down to the small fish again, or whatever. Because now you're new to the league and you're the rookie guy, and it's the same thing in the big leagues. Now, no matter how quote unquote good you were in the minor leagues, so you're in the big leagues now, and you got to prove that you are worthy of being there. Players, managers, and media. But more importantly for anything is your peers. I mean, I was, suddenly I'm working with guys that I had been watching work umpire baseball for years, names that I'd heard for years, people that I looked up to, people that were, outstanding umpires and had their own, reputations. Do they take you in? Absolutely. It's a small fraternity, and we're constantly looking out for each other. It's when you go to a game, there's actually three teams on the field. The umpires and a four-man crew. If my partner misses a play at third, we've all missed a play because it could have. First of all, it could have just easily been me, and it has been many times. But also is because you're the only four that got each other's back. Nobody else cares.
Right.
Nobody else cares. And a fan who loves your call at one time, and then the next time it goes against him, so he thinks he's the worst umpire in the world. So fans don't play into our thinking at all, really.
Right.
Because it's just that's the least of your problems. That you have two dugouts and two teams that you have to deal with, and that's your priority in working a game. And so they take you in, and they help you not only just by observing you and helping you in the locker room. Hey, you took that play a second. You might want to try this or do this or whatever. But also just to help you transition into the big leagues. These are all new cities we're going through. These are all new hotels, new locker rooms, new stadiums, new teams, new players. There's a lot of stuff on your plate as a rookie umpire. And by the way, don't miss a pitch and don't miss a play. So you got all this going on. So yes, it's exciting. It's what you are striving to do as you get into professional baseball. But it's also the unknown. Like and quite frankly, do I deserve to be here? You kind of prove to yourself that hey, they think I better not disappoint them.
Right. So let's say there's a 7 o'clock game. What's the typical day for an umpire look like?
Every guy's a little bit different. We have some guys that get up early and maybe work out and eat breakfast, whatever. We have guys that sleep in, and after games we have guys that go out, and unwind and have a few beers and our night owls maybe watch a movie or something in the hotel. And it's 4 a.m. before shutting it down. We have other guys that shut it down early. So you have that individuality going, but. For me, a typical day was it changed through my career. When I was younger and I first got on staff, I was a guy who slept in a lot, and later as my career went on, I would get up usually around 9 o'clock and have a little breakfast. I would go on an hour walk or so. Then I would sometimes. Take a power nap in the afternoon. A 7 o'clock game usually leave. We will be there about 5:30, 5:30, 5:45. So depending on where we're at, what it was the ballpark, we leave anywhere from 5 to 5:15, whatever the situation may be. But unlike for example, even college umpires or college football officials, they may once a week, or they're typically having a pregame. Frankly, meeting the two teams. What's going on? But we work every day together. We work 130 plus games together. So if there's a situation or a certain pitcher with a certain move to first or whatever that we're going to encounter, we might talk about that. But otherwise, guys will get to the ballpark. And a lot of crews will play cards,
Yeah.
It just all depends on the guys on the crew and that kind of stuff. And, and then you get mentally and just prepared for your game that evening, and then out you go. And but some guys, some crews play guys on crews play golf like 2 or 3 times a week. They'll play golf or get up early and play 18 holes and. Some crews will have lunch together every day or practically every day. Some crews won't even see each other until they go to the ballpark. It just depends on the guys who you're working with and that kind of thing.
Right. So what's an off season like?
When I was working in the big leagues, off season I loved it. When you're in the minor leagues, you're only paid for the times you work. When you're in the big leagues, you're paid year round. They just take your salary and divide it by 12. So you're getting checks the first of the month year round. In the minor leagues, typically, I worked officiated football and basketball at the high school level. I worked at a liquor store one winter. I worked at a convenience store. You just find basically temporary jobs to get you through the winter because you're going to be going back to whatever league you're going back to. Once you get to the big leagues, you're getting paid, and so I traveled a little bit, which sounds insane because that's all I do during the season. But you rack up a ton of frequent flyer miles and a ton of hotel points, and in the off season, it's nice to travel to places that you want to go and not have to work. So you go to Hawaii, or you go to Mexico, or you go to Australia, or do whatever. But it just you have the time and to do that. Some guys have off-season jobs. Some sell real estate, or just to, because they get bored. But when you get to the major leagues, you do not have to work in the off-season like you do in the minor leagues because you're getting a nice salary. You're getting paid year-round.
Dale, I wanted to ask you, whenever there's a rule change or something like that, how does that get relayed to you guys? It's got to be interesting. For 10 years, this is what we've been doing, and then all of a sudden we got to do this. So what's that whole process like?
Well, up until they combined, 2000 was a complete change in all of baseball. Instead of the American League and National League having their own separate staffs, their own separate office, the league president annual thing. All of it, they got rid of the league presidents. They combined everything under the office of the commissioner, and it changed a lot of things. What it also did was you're combining the umpire staffs. The American League and National League had the only real rule difference was the designated hitter. The baseball rule book was the same, except that the American League they had the DH and the National League they didn't. But there were a lot of part of the rules. Well, for example, in the American League, a trip to the mound by a manager or a coach ended when he left the mound and walked past the foul line on his way to the dugout. In the National League, a trip ended when he left the dirt circle of the mound. So that's one of many differences, how they interpreted the same rule book and how they would interpret things. And then there were also differences umpire-wise, little things, and some not so little. But in the American League, fly ball to the outfield, there was always whoever had that jurisdiction where the ball was hit would go out on the fly ball. The National League, the only time they would go out on a fly ball is if a quote-unquote trouble ball, which means a possibility of a diving catch or a possibility of going off the wall or spectator interference or that kind of thing. The National League, the first and third umpires always started out when the pitch was thrown, straddling, unless there's a runner on it, straddling the foul line. In the American League, we always start off with both feet in foul territory. Now, again, these are little differences, but there were several of them that needed to be worked out because now the umpires were working both leagues. Also started in the 2000 is we started, it used to be there just weren't rule changes in baseball. It was so rare to have a major rule change. There might be a clarification or something, but the rules were pretty much in stone and had been for years.
Yeah.
Well, starting in 2000, it just started to change. Every year there were rule changes. We had pace of play stuff going on. We had, of course, more recently we had the replay, which is, the regulations for replay looks like a mid-city phone book. It's it's a lot of stuff, and so we had to get together on that stuff. So every year, starting in the early 2000s, we would have what we call a retreat in January. It's in Scottsdale, and for about 4 days, all the umpires and the umpire staff, the supervisory staff, and everything would get together, and we would go over all the new stuff, how it's interpreted, how they want us to call it, go over maybe whatever changes there might have been in our contract or in travel or whatever it may be. But it was a chance for all of us to be in the same room and get it one time from the people in management to get us up to date on how they want things done. And the minor leagues do the same thing during spring training in March in both Florida and Arizona. They have one designated day where or night, whatever it is. They get all the minor league umpires that are working in Florida or Arizona or whatever, and they get together for a dinner and they go over all the changes that are happening in the minor leagues. So that's because it's tough. This isn't a job. You see guys at the retreat, and you see guys in spring training because some guys in spring training because you're working with different guys in spring training. But once the season starts, it's rare that you even see other umpires. You talk to them obviously, but because rarely are two crews in the city at the same time. You get it once in a while with New York or Chicago if somehow both home teams are playing, and that doesn't usually happen. But it's just tough to get everybody together because you're always constantly on the move. So January, to answer your question, January is when they get together, have the retreat, and go over everything that is going to happen that coming season.
Ah, nice. So throughout the entire year, the same four guys stay together.
Yeah, you're in the major leagues. You have 19 crews. There are 15 crews at maximum working every night because there's 30 teams, 15 games. You have 2 crews in New York working replay every week. And then there are 2 crews that are off that week. Every crew gets 4 weeks off during the season. And so your crew's put together. I was a crew chief since 2001. The crew chiefs right around this time of year would submit to the supervisor, an umpire supervisor, 5 names. The 5 names that 5 guys that you would like to have on your crew. And what they try to do is match you up with at least one of those names, if not more. And each crew is set up. You have your crew chief, then you have your 2-man. The 2-man is first runner up. So if the crew chief is gone for whatever reason, family thing, or hurt or whatever. Most cases, not always, but most cases, the 2-man is the crew chief, and they'll bring up a fill-in AAA guy on your crew. But you have your chief, your 2-man, your 3-man, and your 4-man, and so there's a crew balance, so to speak. You don't want to put 4 15, 20 plus veterans on one crew, and then another crew has a crew chief and 3 guys that are their 3rd year. I mean, you want to have some balance in there.
Yeah.
And then theoretically, if everybody's healthy and there's no family emergencies or family leave for a wedding or something, the 4 guys will work together every single game. A lot of times that doesn't quite happen because there are situations where they may need to move your 2-man to another crew or your 3-man to another crew because that crew has 2 guys out or whatever. They don't want it to be, they don't want to lose too much experience on a crew. But yeah, you're up with 3 other guys. You work the season together, and then the next year you may be together again, or you may switch some guys around. That all that's there's nothing really consistent about that, but you work your crew together, and hopefully you're with 3 guys that you really get along with.
Right. I was just gonna ask what it's like when you got a guy where you're just going, come on, man, this guy really.
I mean, there's umpires are just like life. I mean, there's some guys that don't get along.
Right.
And so, the management and our supervisors, they have a pretty good idea who they shouldn't put together.
Yeah.
And some crew chiefs will just flat out say, here's the guys that I would like to work with. Please do not put me with so and so. And it's not so much to that you're better than them or whatever. It's just that that it's oil and water. It's just not going to work.
Right.
But at the big league level, even if you're with somebody that it's not one of your favorite guys, you're compensated now, unlike the minor leagues where, I have literally been on crews. It doesn't happen often, but I've literally been on crews in the big leagues where we stayed at 4 different hotels. And part of it, not necessarily because they didn't get along, but part of it was because this guy's a Marriott guy and he wants Marriott points, and this guy's a Hyatt guy and he wants Hyatt points, and this guy likes to stay by the airport, and this guy likes to stay downtown, and a lot of it is just preference type stuff. But you can do that in the big leagues because you're making money, you're making per diem, and in the minor leagues, it's a different concept. You're traveling together a lot of times in a van. In the lower minors, and you're just forced to spend a lot more time with your partners. So it's almost, and plus you're not making it. No one's making any money. So you're if you're with guys you don't get along with in the minor leagues, it's going to make for a lot longer season for sure.
Right, and you brought up guys and health issues. You've had your fair share. What's it like when you get hit by a foul ball, or you get a direct ball to the face? What's that like? We can only imagine, but until you've been there and experienced it, I don't really think one could know.
Well, I'll tell you what it's like. It's just a whole heck of a lot of fun. It's just part of what happens. Hopefully, first of all, you have things that are in your control, which is making sure your equipment's up to date. Your mask and your mask pads are new. It's suggested that you get new pads every year, just because of the wear during a year is just going to decrease the amount of absorption or cushion that it'll have. But you want your equipment to fit properly and all that stuff. That's in your control.
Yeah.
The things out of your control is foul balls and catchers missing or pitchers or catchers not on the same page and signs being missed. a catcher that just flat out misses a ball. You know, and those are things that just happen. And you know, also in your control is positioning. I mean, there's a way to work behind the plate and work behind the catcher that still affords you a good look at the pitch. And then there's things that you might do that aren't necessarily, you know, should do, and that will make a higher percentage of you know, you might get hit. I took several hits to the legs, the upper thigh, like a foul ball that bounces and hit you up in a non-protected, you know, thigh, and I had bruises that were you know, huge. You know, take it in the elbow or the hand. You know, and then of course the shots to the mask. Let's not forget the cup. I had to twice in my career I had to leave a game because of a foul ball to the cup that put me down. And that's a thrill. So you know, it's not fun, but it's not something you know, it's quite frankly, it's not something you dwell on or think about, because if you do, you're not thinking about the pitch and getting the pitch right. When it happens, it happens. You can deal with it, but you just you know, for the most part, it's out of your, you know, thought process, because that's not, you know, it's not like a hitter's going up there thinking, gosh, I hope I don't strike out. He's going there saying,
right.
The ball. So you know, that's part of it. But it's not a lot of fun. There's no doubt.
Right. So one of the reasons you retired when you did the past year, right?
Yeah.
You're right, and it was part of that was due to the concussion stuff. And you've had several throughout your career. You know, what's it like coming back? Was there a mental barrier or anything coming back?
Well, the first time I had four concussions in 4 years. I had 2 in 8 months. The second in that 8-month period was the one that I did not come back to the field after I recovered from that.
Yeah.
And but the first time I got a concussion where I missed a significant time, I missed, I don't know, three weeks or so before I was cleared to come back. Ironically, the first plate game that I had coming back at Strasburg for Washington was the pitcher pitching in Arizona when I got the concussion, and I so happened my first plate job back in Miami. He was with Washington, and he was pitching. So that, I thought, well, this was, you know, that's interesting. But you know, the thing is, he had nothing to do with it. It just happened to be he was on the mound, but he does throw hard. But you know, as I was recovering from that first one, it honestly never entered my mind would I be a little gun shy or something when I came back, until a friend of mine about a day before I was leaving goes, "Well, do you think you'll be a little gun shy when you?" I'm like, "What?" Excuse me. And I thought, you know, no, I'm not going to be gun shy. And you know, and then in my mind I'm thinking, will I be gun shy? You know, I mean,
right.
I didn't know, but the fact of the matter is, I got back there, and that first pitch came in, and it was, quite frankly, just like I hadn't missed any time. I mean, you just go to a routine. I'd called a zillion pitches by that point in my career, and I knew what was going on. I will have to be honest, though. After the last one of the, not really part of the decision to not come back to the field, but it certainly was something I had thought about, was when that last concussion, when I also had whiplash and it was carted off the field on a stretcher in a neck brace. As I was recovering from that, I thought, well, you know, I'm not sure. I'm just not sure if I am going to be ready, you know, even though I'm cleared, because at that point I was getting tired of getting concussions, you know,
right.
And I mean, when they were taking me off the field, I'm in this neck brace. You know, you can only look up. All I'm looking at is the ceiling or the roof of the Sky Dome or whatever they call it now in Toronto. And I'm thinking to myself, I cannot believe this happened again. I can't believe that this just happened again. And you know, I'd gone throughout my whole career. Now, let me a little side note here: concussions really weren't as taken as serious as they should have been, and as they are now. until the early to mid 2000s.
Sure.
And there is no doubt in my mind during the minor leagues and early in my major league career, there were shots that I took that I probably should have left the field. But back then it was the old, kid, yeah,
right.
You'll be fine, shake it off, yeah, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And, of course, we know now that that's absolutely the wrong thing to do. And so there's no doubt I've had concussions before. I'm not saying a lot of them, but I'm sure I have.
Sure.
But suddenly, in a 4-year period, it seemed like I was getting whacked every season, at some point. And my mechanics were the same. I even talked to supervisors and reviewed my video to see, was I doing something different? Was I putting myself in a position that I shouldn't be or whatever? And that really wasn't the case. It was just basically in the wrong place at the wrong time. And you can take all the precautions that you want with equipment and positioning and everything. The fact of the matter is, if the ball's going to find you, it's going to find you. And so, that's the way it is. And there's many times you're taking a foul ball off the mask, and there's no problem because it's the angle it hits or where it hits on the mask. The mask absorbs it, not you. But the ones I took, 3 out of the 4 that I took were shots in the chin area, which that's not a good place to hit.
Yeah.
And so anyway, that was my history with that, and I made the decision as I was recovering from that last one. I was going to retire in a couple of years anyway, and I made the decision. You know what? I sought out some specialists, talked to 3 of them total, and all 3 had the same answer for me when I said, what, if any, long-term effects will these concussions have? And all 3 of them said, it's almost like they read the memo. They said, we don't know. We don't have the data yet. We're trying to get the data. There's research going on. But at this point, we just don't know if you will have any repercussions at all.
Yeah.
And then they all 3 basically said, but what we do know is the more head blows that you take, the higher percentage that you're going to have issues in the future. So, that to me was saying, I'm so close to retirement.
Yeah.
And I was trying to figure out how I would defend myself if I went back to work and then got hit again and had to be carted off. How am I going to say, well, why am I doing this? Am I doing it? I've had World Series. I've had a great career. Why risk when you're almost at retirement? Why risk the fact that you may have that one shot that is going to affect you, headaches for the rest of your life, memory issues, maybe neck issues? Why do that? So that's why I just said I think I've had enough, and I walked away.
Yeah, you had mentioned that you got a chance to work in the World Series and even some All-Star games. What is that like? Obviously they are picking the best umpires of that year to do those games. Am I right?
Yeah. It's again, when we said earlier about getting that call to the big leagues for the first time, and it's a goal that you're trying to achieve from day one at umpire school. Once you get to the big leagues, there's other goals now, and one of them obviously is to work a World Series. I mean, you that would be the pinnacle of a career, and I was fortunate enough to work 3 of them. The first time, a funny story. The first time I got that World Series call, it was in 1998, and it's a different system now. And of course, back then it was American League, National League, so I was only one of 3 American League umpires that would be on the crew, and 3 National League guys. But back then, our contract said that you had to inform the postseason umpires by September 10th. So now it's much later. It's only 10 days before the event. So I get this call. I was in Toronto. It was a Saturday, and we had a day game. It was a Saturday night. I get a call, and it's Marty Springstead, the head of the American League Supervisors. He says, Scotty, you're going to work the World Series this year. And of course, we don't know who's going to be in the World Series or anything, but I just knew I was going to work it. Well, the next day, it just so happened, I was thrilled. I mean, I was excited and happy, and I was already starting to get nervous. There's all kinds of things going on. But the next day, I just I was acting crew chief that weekend because Dave Phillips, my regular crew chief that year, had hurt his ankle or something. He was back in St. Louis, so I'm crew chief. And the next day I had the plate. It was Boston and at Toronto, and I ended up that day because of several different plays. I ended up ejecting both managers and a relief pitcher. So I got the trifecta. It was very nice. It was just one of those days that happened. Well, Marty calls me after the game, and he goes, "Scotty," I go, "Hey, Marty," and he goes, "You understood last time when I called you, I said you got the World Series, right?" Because he was saying, I mean, you understand that you're in, right? Because you go out the next day and you run 3 guys, including both managers. We laughed about that for a long time. But it's like I said, it's an absolute thrill to be chosen. It's something that you always want as you get to the big leagues and you have other goals, like I said, and one of them is the World Series. You always want to get that first World Series, because even if you never get another one, that's something that you always hear the cliche, they can never take that away from you, but it's true. Right? Once you are a World Series umpire, you could have 2 or 3 other World Series, but that first one's the one where you are now a World Series umpire, and you get that ring, and that's again, that's something that you have forever. Yeah. And it's just it's such a pinnacle to your career. So I was absolutely thrilled. I had a kind of an odd career, because I had 3 World Series in 7 years, and then I never had another one. My last 13 years, 12 years, I never got another one. So apparently I was really good for about a 7-year stretch.
So part of being at that major league level, you've got to be around some of the players. Here these guys are the best in the world at the game of baseball, along with you guys as umpires. But in terms of seeing these guys and how they go about their business, was there anything that stood out to you or learned from watching these guys?
Well, you're absolutely correct. You're on the field with the best baseball players in the world, and you see, obviously, as you're umpiring a game, you're not a fan. You're an umpire. You've got work to do, and responsibilities and that kind of thing. Right. But I got to be honest. There were times, especially like when I was working third base, and let's say there's nobody on, and I'll see a ground ball deep in the hole at shortstop, and shortstop somehow gets to it, and then somehow contorts himself to make a throw to first and get the runner. And I'll see, I have no real responsibility on that play, and I'll watch that and just go, wow, how in the hell did he do that? And I mean, there at times you will see something and just go, wow. I mean, because it's just you just respect the talent and the athleticism that the players show. But that's and you, a lot of times you reflect on that too after a game, because like for example, if that same play I just described, if I had first base, I don't have a chance to go wow, because I got a play to call. And so right. I'm focusing on that. But you respect the fact that these are the best in the world. You respect the fact that they are so talented in what they do, whether it be hitting or fielding or pitching or catching or the overall package. But you also understand that no matter how good or famous or decorated a player is, as an umpire, you can't get caught up in that. You hear, let's say it's a 3-time Cy Young winner on the mound, and there'll be a close pitch that the umpire calls a strike, and they'll say, well, like so-and-so on the mound, so they got to give him that pitch. Well, no. You don't have to give him anything. It's just that this guy's pretty good, and he just painted the corner, and he throws strikes, And I think it's a little bit unfair sometimes to put into viewers' minds, fans' minds, that we give things to people because of who they are, or take away because of who they are. It's a rookie hitter, so I'm going to call a strike at you because you're a rookie hitter. You don't know any better. It's just not your mindset. It's like you have a close play at first, and the runner's really fast. And you call him safe, and well, you gave it to him. He's a quick run. Well, no, we didn't give it. I didn't know who the runner is. And that's the ball said, oh, this is so and so, and the fielder is so and so, and he's throwing from there. Okay, I'm going to call him safe.
Right.
It's just not how you. It's just not how you look at things, and so sometimes that's a little frustrating to hear that because people believe it, and they believe that. I made a joke at the end of the '93 season. Was the last game at the old Arlington ballpark before they moved into a new one, which is now going to be replaced by another new one, apparently. I had the last game there, and it was also the last. The Rangers were playing Kansas City, and it was also the last game for George Brett and Nolan Ryan. They were both retiring, and neither one were in the playoffs, and so that was going to be their last game. Well, the way the rotation worked out, I was going to be behind the plate that game, and Ryan was supposed to start, and so I was, telling my crewmates, I said, no, this is like a couple of weeks before the game. I said, now what am I supposed to do the last game of the season? I said, I got a Hall of Famer Nolan Ryan pitching, I got a Hall of Famer George Brett hitting. Now who the hell am I supposed to give it to? I said, why don't we make this easy? We'll have first and third at bat, he strikes out. Second and fourth, he gets hit. How's that? Well, everybody will be happy, right? We'd laugh and joke about it. As it turned out, Ryan ended up on the disabled list. He didn't pitch, but George Brett played, and Ryan and Brett brought out the lineup cards, and I joked with them. I said, "Thank God you're not pitching." Otherwise, I didn't know what to do. They laughed. They thought it was funny, whatever. But it's these guys. You respect these guys for their talent, but you also understand that you still have to throw strikes. You still have to throw the guy out or make the tag on the runner or whatever it is, and so you're not caught up into the fan side of it, or you understand who they are, you respect who they are and what they've done, but you still have a job to do.
Right. So what about the catcher? Was there one that made you go, man, this guy's good?
Well, any catcher that didn't let the ball hit me was one.
Right.
The plate umpire has a unique relationship with catchers because you're right there. They're kind of protecting you in a way. I mean, that's not their job is to catch the ball, but they don't go out there thinking I'm going to protect the umpire. But some it's like anything, personality. Some guys are talkers. Some guys have a good personality. Some guys you don't get along with for whatever reason. I'm not a huge talker when I work. Some umpires are more conversationalists than I am, and just the same with catchers. Some catchers talk a lot more. Some catchers just hardly say anything. And so it's I've had several good catchers. Mike Matheny, who just got fired from the managerial job at St. Louis, but he caught for the Brewers and then for St. Louis, and I loved working behind Mike. He was a good catcher. He presented the ball well, caught the ball well. And I remember one time he was catching, and him and the pitcher got crossed up, and he missed it. The ball hit me, and after and then went off to behind him. He had to run and get it because there was a player on or a runner on or whatever. But he came back and he goes, "Dale, you okay?" And I go, "Yeah, no, I'm fine." And so about an inning later, he comes out and he goes, "You realize, of course, that you don't know how bad I feel that that ball hit you." I said, "Mike, it's okay, dude. Everything's okay." I mean, it's and I mean I believe his father-in-law. I may be incorrect, but I thought it was his father-in-law was a referee in the NFL. So Mike had an understanding of officials a little bit. He understood that. He may not agree with you all the time. I'm not saying that, but he understood what guys go through a little bit and had a different perspective on that. Dan Wilson, the Mariners, I got along with him. I mean, there was a lot of guys I got along with. And there were guys that are much better catchers than others. And when I say that is they present the ball much better. Yeah. The best catcher I ever worked behind, as far as making damn near every pitch look like a strike, was Bob Boone. Bob Boone had a uncanny strong wrists and soft hands type of thing where he could receive the ball in such a way that he, you hear now about framing, the catcher's framing, and he framed that pitch. He really fooled the umpire. Well, it's a little overblown. A guy that frames, quote unquote, a lot of times will take a pitch that he thinks is outside, and when he catches it, he kind of moves his glove in after he catches it to make it try to look like he caught it,
Right.
closer to the plate or whatever. Well, as an umpire, that quick kind of spastic almost movement of the glove once he catches it, all that says to me is you thought it was outside, and so I'm probably going to call it outside because you're not helping your cause. What helps your cause is a guy like Bob Boone, who would catch that same pitch, but and I'm not sure how he did it, but he massaged. I always called it he massaged the pitch when he caught it, so to where he caught it so softly, yet almost gracefully, if you can use that term, that where he just made that pitch look good. He'll take that low pitch and instead of it's borderline on the knee, it's really close, and instead of catching with the glove down, he kept his glove up, and it's the same location, but it makes the pitch look a lot better. He presented the pitch much better. Yeah. Now, we call pitches because of where they are in the strike zone or not in the strike zone. That being said, a catcher is a good catcher is going to help a pitcher. He's going to help make a few pitches every game. What probably other catchers would you would call a ball. With this guy, he'll call a strike. It's the same pitch, but it's because of how he receives the ball. And if you trust me, a pitcher loves catchers that do that because it helps them.
Right.
Pitchers have real issues when they throw a decent borderline pitch and a catcher butchers it because now it's called a ball, and they're frustrated. A lot of times they don't like the call, but they're also frustrated that their teammate didn't basically butcher the catch.
Yeah, with the whole technology coming into play, the K zone and all that stuff, has that maybe changed some of the approach of game calling?
Well, yeah. I mean, it changed a lot of things. The pitch track system used to be called QuestTech. Was what we had internally as far as our evaluations and judging pitches. First started around 2002, I believe, and quite honestly, we had gotten a little bit away from the rule book strike zone. We had morphed into a much wider plate and a much lower top end of the zone, and the bottom of the zone was up a little bit. In other words, our zone was too low and too wide, too low on the top level and too wide. And pitches that, quite frankly, now, if you called strikes, that back then, before the pitch tracking system was put into effect, and everybody did it, frankly. Pitches that were 1-2 inches outside were being called strikes. Yeah. It just morphed and kind of evolved into that type of zone. And hitters knew it too. They didn't necessarily like it, but they knew it. Well, and so did pitchers, because they would feast out there. But when the system came in, it was one of the reasons they implemented this is because we had combined the staffs in 2000, and you always heard that American League was the highest strike zone and National League was low, and blah blah blah, whatever. But the point is, they wanted to be much more consistent staff wide on calling the strike zone, and they wanted us to get more back to the more rule book definition of the strike zone and not the umpire / what's acceptable definition. And they tweaked the rule itself. It used to be the upper part of the zone was the shoulders. That's just too high in baseball, not necessarily in little league and that kind of stuff, but in the big league that's too high. So now it's the midpoint between the waist and the shoulders, so that lowered it to about the letters approximately. They also tweaked a little bit the low part of the zone, what they call it the hollow of the knee. In effect, what that meant is it brought the low part of the zone down about maybe an inch. But what they also want to do is get us back on the plate, especially that outside pitch, and that's exactly what that system has done. It has made the Major League strike zone. And it didn't happen overnight. There was some pain involved in this because we were adjusting our strike, what we've been calling for years, and that meant the hitters and the pitchers had to adjust too. I mean, we've got that outstanding pitching staff in Atlanta for years, Smoltz, Glavine, Maddox, they feasted on pitches off the plate that were called strikes, and they weren't just called strikes for them; they were called strikes for, we were calling strikes out there. Well, suddenly those pitches were balls because of what was going on, and there was a transition period there where they weren't happy, and they weren't the only ones. But and so it was a learning process for everybody because hitters were now suddenly getting pitches on the knee that used to be called low and balls, now were strikes like that. Pitchers were getting used to have pitches that used to be strikes off the plate, now being called balls. Everybody had to adjust. But after about a year and a half of that, we all kind of got on the same page, and everybody knows what is the rule book definition of what they want us to call. So yes, has the technology changed things? Yes, it has. I think we needed an adjustment because, like I said, we were getting too far off the plate, and we weren't giving the pitches above the belt. Practically, if it was above the belt, it was a ball, which is just wrong. Yeah. So it did change it, and I for the most part, I think it changed it for the better. Yeah.
So did you think that might have had an impact? Because you hear a lot about time of play. You think being a little bit tighter with the zone, maybe more balls are being called, and maybe I'm wrong. I haven't looked at the numbers, but do you think that this contribute to the game being longer?
Well, I think the length of Major League Baseball games, I think there's several factors that have played into this. I mean, when I came my first year in the big leagues in 1986, the average 9-inning game in baseball was approximately 2 hours and 40 minutes.
Yeah.
The average, I believe, last or 2017 was about 3 hours. Now, that's the average. So you got a lot of games that are going beyond that. 9-inning games. They don't count any extra inning games in these figures. I mean, you get some of those Red Sox, Yankees. They're almost 4 hours, 3:45, 3:50. It's insane. Yeah. Now, what plays into that? Well, okay, you were asking about the pitches or the strike zone. Granted, we are we refine the plate and the strike zone, but that I think would have a small effect on it. I don't think that's the major thing. First of all, games have more commercial time now. The in between innings is longer because TV pays the bills, and when you get into postseason, it's even longer. I mean, right now, a Major League Baseball game that's not a national game like the Saturday Fox or the Sunday ESPN or the Sunday TBS, you have in between innings of 2:05. And if it's a one of those games I just told you about, it's 2:25 or 2:35, something like that. Now that's only 20 and 30 seconds difference. Yeah, but that's every half inning, so you compile that to whatever that is. So you've got the fact. And then in the postseason, I mean, in the World Series, there I think the breaks are 3 minutes, and there's like 2 or 3 innings where the breaks are 3.5 minutes. That's a long time.
Right.
For pitch. Some pitchers are ready after 45 seconds. They boom, boom, boom. They're ready to go. And a lot of times now we just tell them, hey, we got long breaks. They'll just sit in the dugout for the first minute because they don't want to be out there, just throwing. Yeah. But that's one of the factors. We have factors now. The philosophy of baseball. Many teams. It didn't used to be a lot of teams do this. Now almost every team does this. They want to work pitch counts. They want the pitcher to work more. They want you to work the counts to 2-2, 3-2. They are much more trying to get hitters to be much more selective and get the pitch count up, especially on starters. So that takes time. You have a lot of hitters now. In these stadiums, you have your walk-up music, and we have guys that won't even leave the batting circle until their walk-up music starts and they're announced. And it's like, again, these are little things, but when you combine all these things together, you have. It seems like you have some pitchers that are human rain delays on the mound. They get a runner on, and they're constantly stepping off, or they're constantly changing signs. They're constantly, stepping off, faking to first, or they're throwing to first, and it's almost like they're scared to throw the ball. Baseball has made a lot of adjustments on game, or trying to make adjustments to help game time, and one of them was trips to the mound. Because it used to be the catcher would go out, then the first baseman would have to go out there and say something to him, and then it just was all this dead time between action. They have what they call a pace of play, and basically, if the pace of play picks up, your game times will be better. They're not trying to necessarily just say, focus on the time per se. They're trying to focus on the game itself and have less downtime between pitches and what's going on. And they've tried several things since the early 2000s to curb this. Some have worked well, some not so much. They're constantly trying to do it. There's talk. They have the pitch clock now, where we didn't used to have that. They have the clock for if you're going to challenge and ask for a replay, you have only so much time to do that, and trying to just get the pace picked up. So, one little change was when they started the pitch clock a few years ago. You used to have pitchers that would, mosey onto the mound and take their warm-ups and just be kind of on their own time. And if it was a really hot day, after the third out, they have to go back out on the mound. Some guys, they get up and they stretch a little bit, and they towel off and stuff. They might just dead time. Well, they put the pitch clock up there, and all of a sudden, these same guys that used to take a little bit of time now because there's something on there actually ticking, and it's something that they can see. They started moving pretty good. They started kind of jogging out there and picking up the pace a little bit. And again, these are little things, but when you put them all together, it's the little things that have made the games longer, and it's the little things that are going to bring the game, reduce the time. And it's a major focus in the commissioner's office, and you're going to see more things to come because it's baseball's just taking too long.
Yeah, I know. I was talking to a buddy, and they were down in Jupiter doing a lot of test runs at the amateur ball level, and they were talking crazy stuff like 1-1 count and stuff like that. They're not going to go that far, are they?
Yeah. No, I don't think that. I don't think baseball lives on tradition and on statistics, and that kind of stuff. I mean, look how it was just a major. When they went from 154 games to 162, and that's when Maris and Mantle were having the home run derby that year, and they wanted to put an asterisk by his name because he had more games to play, blah, blah, blah. So any major change, starting with a 1-1 count or whatever, I don't see that happening. Now, what I do see happening, and I think may happen in the future here, is after again those extra innings, after two extra innings, maybe the 10th and 11th, if it's still tied, you're going to start with a runner at second base.
Yeah.
And they're doing that in the minor leagues, and the reason is, we had that unbelievable 18-inning game in the World Series this year, 7 hours and 20 minutes or something like that, and that's phenomenal. And you think, oh my God, and all the things that go with that, but frankly, the longer you get into the extra innings, you might be pitching, position players.
Right.
You've used your whole bench. You can't pinch hit now with the runner in scoring position because you have nobody on the bench anymore. You've used everybody up, and the product itself gets diluted as the innings go. So baseball, not only time-wise is that just huge, but they're thinking, what, our product isn't that good once we get into the 15th, 16th inning because it's, maybe they're not scoring because, everybody's fatigued, whatever it is. So I do think that you will at someday see something to the effect of after two extra innings, you'll have a runner at second or whatever, trying to stimulate scoring. It's like people hated it when hockey went to the shootout.
Yeah.
So that's not how we did it. You play till there's a winner. But people are kind of getting used to it because at some point we got to end this game.
Right.
So let's get it done, and we got 162 to play, so let's get this one done.
Right. Well, listen, Dale, I'm just looking at the clock and I'm noticing the time. So let's kind of end with this. Now that you are retired, what are you going to do now?
Well, I first of all, I missed almost the entire 17 season, although I was on staff. That's when I got hurt. So I've officially retired. I've been retired since January 1st of 2018. I've loved it. I'll be honest with you. Even though the injury prompted me to move up my retirement a couple of years, I was ready. I was ready, and 32 years in the big league is a long time. 38 years total in professional baseball. That's a lot of foul tips, as I like to say.
Yeah.
I'm enjoying just life. I'm enjoying like in 2017. I lived in Portland, Oregon. The summers in the Northwest are spectacular, and I would miss every single one of them since I've been in baseball because I would be somewhere else. And so I really just enjoy doing the things that people do in the summer in the Northwest. I've had some opportunities. I'm going to be speaking at some umpire groups around the country. I'm working with American umpires group out of Indianapolis, doing some evaluating for them in June and July for a week each. I'm keeping my hand in it a little bit and helping out where I can, but I'm also keeping my schedule open. I'm not looking for something that's going to take me away from home for weeks at a time or many times a year because I've done that all my life. So I'm ready to just enjoy being off and I'm having fun doing it.
Awesome. Well, Dale, I really, this has been one of my favorite conversations. It's been interesting to see things from your perspective as an umpire. But anyway, I really appreciate your time.
Absolutely. I had a great time. Thanks for asking me, and I'm